The reason why we'll take it over our opening is because they don't provide the link between why factory farms are bad and then why this vigilantism is justified. I'm gonna do a three-pronged approach in my speech. First off, why is factory farming bad? Then why this vigilantism is justified, and then why is this uniquely the best solution at solving this problem, which they didn't give you either. First off, then, why do we think factory farming is bad? Because all OG told you here is abuse is bad, but let me actually explain you why this is so. This is because A, they have a huge amount of abuse. That's to say, these animals have no light to day, or they have like barely any space to move around. They're literally cramped to the fact where they can't even move around. Number two, they're dehumanized. That's to say, chickens' beaks are clipped, pigs' tails are chopped off. They're literally maimed in many instances, making them agitated and fighting against each other. This is all just to contain them. And then B, wastage. This is because a lot of the time due to a lack of regulation, a lot of these animals are killed below legal standards, leaving a lot of waste that is caused due to inhuman practices, such as stuffing them with antibiotics to maximize their growth just in order to maximize their profits. This leads to not only a harm in the waste that's produced, but also zoonotic diseases. Because something about like 90% or so of upcoming diseases are caused by zoonotic origin. This is why it's so important to have this focused on in the debate, because factory farms uniquely provide low health and sanitary standards. This is because their incentives are aligned to maximize the amount of profits that they can. This means diseases are often transferred from animals to humans. This is going to be a major threat in the future. And then, just to add on to OG, that not only is immense CO2 produced, but waste from like slaughtering animals, polluting nature, polluting rivers, these are all incredibly bad things. Then, why I think this is incredibly important, why is this then justified to get this vigilantism? This is because number one, these corporations are making immoral decisions to brutally slaughter these animals and contain them. And note, this is not to help consumers. This is not to give consumers lower prices, but this is to increase the amount of profits they get per animal. This accumulates to billions of dollars with every year of sales they make, while dramatically decreasing the quality of the lives these animals have. Number two, these animals literally have zero capacity to change the state that they're living in. That is to say, to the point where these animals are incapacitated, to the extent where they are locked up in cages and can't escape, but also notably that they're on a lower intellectual and physical level compared to humans. I think at this point, just to fulfill our own moral obligations, I think just that's another reason why we should hope for these vigilante attacks, because these animals literally can't do anything to stop it. Before I move on, yes, I'll take a POI.
So earlier you stated that it was really bad because there were thousands of tons of greenhouse gas emissions. However, do you not agree that burning these factories or bombing them, as your opening government has stated, is also creating greenhouse gas emissions? And if you're doing this in the factories, that's also bad.
I think this whole thing is just on scale, right? Because even if you bomb up a factory, I think the fact that you're producing, I think agriculture is the number one cause of greenhouse gas emissions in the entire world. I think bombs here and there on factory farms doesn't increase it that much. I think the main point is about the amount of emissions caused by the process that it has. And number three, it's bad for humans. This is why it's unjustified. Even if you don't care about animals at all, I think the huge harms that we explained to animals is extremely bad. Then finally, why are these vigilante attacks uniquely the best solution, and why can no other thing such as mandates that they told you solve this? Number one is persuasive attention. That's to say, vigilante attacks brings huge amounts of public attention to factory farms. This is the best method, because in status quo, all you see is talks about veganism and everybody hating on this, and everybody is just largely supporting meat. I think bad attention is good attention here, here because it's the only thing that will actually occupy the otherwise preoccupied minds of everyday people. Number two, lobbying power. That is to say, hoping for things like mandates is never going to solve the problem, because as we've seen, throughout time, this hasn't been effective because a huge amounts of profits are passed on to governments. They make huge amounts of money from this. And finally, it's because even if these mandates can be passed, consumers will never agree. All they see is an increase in price, or they don't see the fact that diseases are passed on to them. They don't see the fact that this is a small increase in price for a huge increase in the quality of their own lives and the animals. For all these reasons, we're so proud to be inside CG. The fundamental issue with this debate was that nobody really understood how factory farms work, what their incentives are, and what's actually going to happen when you launch these attacks on these factory farms. A couple things in my speech. Firstly, I'll be reinstating what our arguments were, what the impacts of them were, and how unengaged they pretty much were throughout the entire debate. Secondly, I'll be rebutting both opposition teams and weighing over government, and then I'll be showing you why we weigh over on the biggest clashes in this debate. So, firstly, what unique mechanisms did we bring to you? We told you more than just the one-liner that opening government did. We told you in the unique ways that abuse can form in factory farms. The fact that a chicken has less space to move around than the A4 sheet of paper that I am writing my debate notes right in front of me. The fact that, the amount of wastage that is created when all these animals die in transportation when they're crushed. And the fact that due to a lack of regulation, these animals are often killed while they feel the pain of electrocution or being beheaded. For all these reasons, factory farming is beyond the comprehension of anybody in this room how bad they truly are. But next, on our point about zoonotic diseases that literally nobody responded to and is extremely important. If you don't think it is, look at COVID. When you don't regulate the passing of raw meat to humans, that's when 90% of the upcoming diseases are from zoonotic origin, and this harms everybody regardless whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or a meat eater. Alright, what were our impacts? We told you that there's going to be a decrease in factory farms, but there's also going to be a greater amount of regulation of existing standards that exist but are not regulated upon because of the power of these corporations. And lastly, there might even be a decrease in meat consumption, which I'll be talking a bit more on later. We told you on how it's justified to do this, and additionally, how we actually decrease the number of farms. But then, let's engage with what the other teams brought in this debate. First, on opening opposition. They rebutted the case by saying that there are minimum safety standards in Canada. First, I want to note that this is not a Canada-based motion. Other countries have more lenient standards. Additionally, many countries do have standards like the US, but they aren't even regulated because of the immense power of these corporations. Second, I think opening opposition clearly doesn't even know what the current regulations are because the regulations permit animals having little to no space to move. They permit antibiotics that kill animals and create antibiotic resistance, impacting billions. And on their point about increased costs that closing opposition tried to expand on as well, it doesn't work whatsoever because factory farms are not designed to decrease prices for consumers. They are designed by nature, to increase profits. And it exists on a spectrum, right? Because studies have shown that when you increase the price of meat by even a few cents, you can increase the space that animals have by 2, by 3, by multiple times. The fact is that these factory farms want to increase the price, the profits as much as possible, because when you're selling trillions of pounds of food, even a slight increase in your profits compounds heavily. I'll take a quick POI.
Wouldn't you agree that companies want to maximize profit is symmetrical on both sides, but uniquely factory farms are able to mass produce these animal products, are able to lower prices, which is essential for people who are just barely living above the poverty line and struggling with other
I get your point. Issues. I get your point, but the issue is that factory farms were not designed to produce meat solely. There are constructs that were designed to torment animals so much that they could squeeze out the profits that is that is unique to any other kind of farm that you could possibly imagine. They're different. You cannot compare them whatsoever. But on opening government, they claim that there are prerequisites because they prove that farms are bad and vigilante attacks decrease this. The issues with their case was that they needed to prove first why it was legitimate, but second, we actually added mechanisms as why this abuse occurs, and we added a really important impact on zoonotic diseases. But next, quickly on closing opposition, because let's be extremely charitable. Let's say that even if poor people can't afford this meat, we would find it better because like these people can eat just simply meat like less often, not 5 times a week, right? They can eat plants. This is because people are principally unaware of the health issues and the inhumane conditions that these animals undergo. B, animal rights outweigh this on scale because there are trillions of animals that undergo this abuse. But C, and this directly destroys closing opposition's case. If people just ate plants, it would just be so much cheaper, right? Because when you realize the fact that the majority of plants grown on Earth are to feed animals, that's when you realize that just simply eliminating animals out of the factor would be so much cheaper to feed people. For all these reasons, we clearly take this debate. Please vote for us.